Hi, we are live for Tech Tuesdays. I'm so glad that you made it here today. I have a wonderful guest lined up for us, but first I'm going to go ahead and run our Tech Tuesday intro. Here. Welcome back. Welcome my special guest today. I have Joe Velderman. He is the VP of Innovation at Cypress Living. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Abby. It's great to be with you today. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, thank you for joining us today. You know, you have such a cool title, and I want to know a little bit about that. How do you get a title like VP of Innovation? Can you tell us, please?
Well, I think it starts with a really aspirational CEO. Our CEO, Troy Churchill, is just an incredible guy. He invited me to join the organization a couple years ago. And he said, I want to think about technology a lot differently than most senior living or aging services providers think about technologies. Like it's less about servers and switches and routers and Wi-Fi and enterprise applications and all that kind of stuff. I want to figure out how to use technology differently and effectively from an operational perspective so that we can really be the change that this industry needs. So that's a big part of my role.
Yeah, it seems so innovative because in the past couple of years, it's like that's exactly what senior living has had to do. It's had to innovate its approach to senior living. How come you've been involved and Cypress has been involved in this for so long? What's the why behind it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right. The last 2 years have really stretched me personally and professionally. There's been certainly no shortage of opportunities for areas to innovate in over the last couple of years. But I think the why behind our vision and our mission here at Cypress, we're not terribly unique in terms of an organization. We're a nonprofit senior living provider. We have a single site, CCRC, fairly large, I guess. And we have a rapidly expanding and growing home and community-based services organization. But a lot of organizations can say that. A lot of organizations can say that they're a nonprofit or that they have a CCRC or a senior living community or home and community-based services organization. And our goal is to really just be different and think about things not from the perspective of what consumers may expect today, but what consumers may expect tomorrow. So we want to be a really good partner to other providers here in our region that we work with on a regular basis. We want to be a really good organization to the customers that we're privileged to serve, and we want to be a good community partner too. And so we try to focus on all three of those things, but do it a lot differently and with a much more intentional future focus than what I think many organizations have.
I'm really intrigued by something you said. You said that we want to be working on tomorrow. And so what can we anticipate for senior living technology tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, frankly, if I had the full answer to that question, I'd probably be, developing something that could accommodate that. I think, the truth is we don't 100% know. We're trying to create that, what tomorrow looks like. And we know that there's some external forces out there that I think we're going to have to compete with when it comes to providing aging services, whether that's organizations like Amazon or CVS or Walmart. They're certainly keenly interested in looking at this space and being able to provide services to this space. We think we've got a brand and a history and an expertise that differentiates us from some of those bigger market players, but they have a lot of advantages that we don't have too, like distribution and logistics and expertise in areas that we don't have. So we're trying to think about some of those things, think about what our consumers' expectations are going forward. I oftentimes find myself thinking about my own parents. I have mom and dad who are in their 60s right now, retired and kind of living out some of their golden years in a very active way right now. They do a lot of traveling and seeing the grandkids and that kind of stuff. But what does senior living look like for them? What expectations do they have? My dad's really big into smart home stuff right now. He's got a Ring doorbell and a Nest thermostat, a Nest smoke detector, and they just got a brand new Samsung refrigerator that has a camera in it. And I think they're going to be really disappointed if they come to a senior living community in, say, 10 years, and they're either not able to bring those things with them, or we don't have those accommodations already for them. So we're really trying to think about that next generation resident, that next generation client, and what expectations do they have from a technology perspective and a service perspective.
Yeah, I think it was you who said recently that residents are moving in with anywhere from 5 to 20 devices. Was that right? Between within a couple?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
it's certainly indicative, I think, of that next generation resident. But I recently met with a future resident here at Cypress Cove, and he had a lot of very sophisticated technology questions. He happened to be a former chief information officer for a group of car dealerships here in Florida. But he was like, I'm bringing this, I'm bringing this, I'm bringing this. Why don't you have fiber optic to my home? Why can't I get 10 gig networking? All kinds of, really great questions. And I think things that we need to start anticipating. But yeah, we've kind of run into some pretty tech savvy residents here at our community who have started to stretch the bounds of what we're able to do technologically for them.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I meet with people regularly, and just yesterday I met with a new client who was in his mid 90s,
Yeah,
and he's doing all of his own taxes and running the software, and just needed a little bit of extra support. That's it. But when they come with these skills and these interests and these passions, it's just one more way that we can support their needs.
yeah, absolutely. Another example, we work has changed too over the last couple of years. There's a lot more options and opportunities to work remotely, and I think a lot of older adults are learning about that too. And so we have some residents who are still operating in a professional capacity.
Mhm.
We have for sure one resident here that serves as a consultant to one of the divisions of our armed forces here in the United States, and he's always talking about his need for a very secure private VPN connection back to the government to be able to continue to do his professional work. So I think those are some of the other constraints that we're going to face as providers going forward, and it's just we need to be prepared for it.
Absolutely. And you touched on something that I'm really passionate about, and I know you are too, which is internet security, privacy, and passwords, right?
Yeah.
And passwords. I think I dedicated all of 2021 just helping people beef up their passwords. And so, in your community, what do you go by? What do you teach your residents in terms of creating secure passwords?
Yeah, it's one of those topics that I think a lot of people would just prefer not to talk about.
Mhm.
But I'm glad that we're having this conversation today and raising awareness about this topic. It's a drum that I've been beating for a little bit, just because I've personally tried to take a different posture and have a little bit different position on passwords. So for me, it started probably about 5 years ago, Abby. I just started realizing that my digital footprint online was not terribly secure. I had three classifications of passwords, but basically every website or service that I logged into was one of three passwords. I had the I'm signing up for this thing one time so I can read this article. I'm never going to sign up for it again. So I'm going to use a super unsecure password, and I don't care if anybody guesses it. And then I had kind of a medium security password, something that was like easy to remember, but not super secure. And I would use that for websites that I thought fit that criteria. And then I had more of a secure password that I used for things like online banking and to check my 401k balance or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, I really only had three passwords for everything. And then I learned that my name was on a list with the Equifax data breach a few years ago. And I had a really a moment where I was just kind of scared for my own, privacy and my own personal digital security. And so I started looking into it. I said, I really need to have ideally a different password for everything that I log into. And I need to have a complex, sophisticated password for everything that I log into that can't be guessable. And so I learned about a tool called LastPass, and I've been a huge LastPass fan for the last few years. LastPass essentially allows me to not have to remember any of my passwords except for my LastPass password,
Mhm.
right? So I have a vault, a digital vault of all of my passwords now. I legitimately don't know what any of them are. Most of them are, 16 to 56 characters long, and they're a combination of uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, symbols, and you wouldn't be able to decipher any of them by looking at them. They're not words or anything like that. They're super sophisticated and secure. But I don't have to remember any of them. I just have to remember the one password to my vault. And LastPass has continued to evolve. Now there's a mobile app for it that will fill in your password for you. If you're on your mobile device, there's a LastPass plugin for your favorite web browser that will fill in that password for you when you're browsing different websites. And so it's transformed my life. I think
Mhm.
I'm in a much better spot from a security perspective. And I've been encouraging a lot of other people to explore the use of a tool like LastPass, if not LastPass. And I'm not here as a paid spokesperson for LastPass or anything. It's just a tool I chose to use. But I know there are others. But it's really kind of alleviated that burden and that headache in my life from having to remember, 50 to 100 or 500 passwords, um, while improving my overall security posture and my overall digital security footprint. So it's been a great benefit for me.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's radically transformed the way I will track my passwords as well. But I teach this all the time in my workshops with residents around the country. And there's something about the password manager that they don't trust.
Mhm. It is a lot to trust, right?
Mhm.
Because you're putting your entire digital life into a single location. And what happens if I can't get into that vault? Or what happens if somebody that I don't want to get into that vault gets into that vault? Now all of a sudden they have the keys to everything, right?
Yeah.
I did a lot of personal research on these different tools, and I think there are some that are better than others. And I think that there's definitely some that we can trust, and probably some that maybe shouldn't be trusted.
Yeah.
But I think these companies go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that your information in there is secure. And I'm actually somebody, I pay for the more premium LastPass subscription. And
Mhm.
with that premium subscription comes a level of insurance that LastPass would offer to me should anything ever happen. And so, I have a safety net, if you will, that I could have reparations made in one way or another for any form of potential breach of my LastPass vault. So I still think it's a good tool. I think it's a worthwhile tool, and I think it's something that you can trust if you find the right tool. And I think that it's probably different for everybody. But I think there's an opportunity to consider paying for that more premium subscription to offer that safety net that I talked about.
Yeah, I think it's very valuable to talk about it, to bring awareness to it, to let people know what's out there, what exists. And I wish there was a way that I could convey to my students that it's trustworthy. In fact, having this is far better than you reusing and recycling passwords across multiple sites.
Right.
And it might just be a generational gap that's occurring. And it's so good that we're talking about that, because I think that this is one, along with scheduling a Lyft ride or an Uber ride that's really hard for older adults to get their brain around, to get their mind around, to really embrace,
Mhm.
but it's actually such a necessary component of today's world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring up Uber and Lyft. I think I was somebody that had a little bit of skepticism about that myself. Before I lived here in Florida, I lived in the greater Chicagoland area, and I was not one of the first people to get on board with Uber or Lyft. It took me a while. I had to get in Uber or Lyft that somebody else had requested and paid for with them before I had a comfort level in doing that on my own. And even my first experience in an Uber was not a great experience. The car was dirty and smelly, and it didn't run very good. And he didn't take the route that I wanted him to take. I was very skeptical of it, but we see how those services have evolved from a safety perspective over the years too. And now, it's a much different service than what it used to be. Those drivers are vetted a lot more. There's some safety nets involved. You see the route on your phone. You have the ability to reach out for help, and it's a service. I think that a lot of people have come to trust now because it's evolved like everything else, and it's become something that's much more trustworthy than it was when it first started out.
Yeah, I think it still has, I think the communication aspect and just getting the confirmation that the ride or the driver is there. There's just so many things about calling up a ride on your phone that doesn't fit into the paradigm that a lot of my clients have. So it's been a really big struggle just teaching them how to understand that technology with all the different options that are available to you with the different rides, right?
Mhm.
So I'm always trying to refine how I can teach that with people. And when you're looking into new technologies for your community, how do you go about finding them? What kind of research do you use to base your observations and your suggestions on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me, finding new technology oftentimes either starts with a problem or a desired destination. Like we have a challenge that we're trying to solve today, and we need to figure out how to apply some technology to that. Let's
Mhm.
shop for that technology, right? Or we know we want to be in this spot in a year or 2 years or whatever. And so let's try to find some technology or develop some technology that's going to get us to that spot. Um, Occasionally in my reading and my research and some of the things that I follow, I'll find a technology that I hadn't been thinking of that I think has a particular interest or a potential purpose within our organization. And so it's probably less of a process or less of a method than what many people may think. But I try to keep my ear to the ground with a lot of different technologies from across the entire tech space and not just senior living or aging services specifically. Um, I have a keen interest in like what hospitals are doing.
Mhm.
I'm really interested in what some of we're seeing retail spaces doing. I'm really interested in seeing what other hospitality organizations are doing or service industries are doing, to see if we can learn from some of those other spaces and so some of those other industries. Um, so a classic example of that, I'm working on something right now. With the pandemic, we did a lot of our culinary operation in the residence room, right? And unfortunately, we had to shut down two of our restaurants on campus, and everything for a couple periods of time over the last 2 years has been in the residence room. Now we're in a much better spot. The restaurants are reopened, and residents are enjoying eating in person in a restaurant again with their fellow residents. But there's still a number of residents who have come to really enjoy that room service element, right? Or maybe just don't have a comfort level from a safety protocol perspective of going down to a restaurant and eating with hundreds of other people in the same room. And so I've said before, I don't think that we're ever going to put that room service genie back in the bottle. I think it's out and it's out to stay at this point. So how do we do that well? How do we do that effectively? How do we do that efficiently without having to hire, a bunch more people to do that? And then the other thing that really changed for us dramatically here at Cypress Cove over the last couple of years has been our deliveries of packages.
Mhm.
Pre-pandemic, we would maybe get 35 to 50 packages a day from the residents. Now we get like 250 packages a day from the residents, right? Everything from Amazon to Instacart to Ship to pharmacy to, I mean, you name it, it's coming in. And it's required, us to kind of pivot and transition from some of our roles internally to be like delivery people now on our campus. Same thing with food. People who used to be restaurant servers or waiters are now food delivery people from a concierge perspective. And I don't know if that's sustainable. I want to try to figure out how to do that and leverage some technology. So I was learning from a different industry again, the hospitality industry, about ways that some hotels are starting to do those deliveries, right? And you look at like a hotel like the EMC2 Hotel in Chicago, they've got a couple of robots that are doing room service delivery. So you can get extra towels or pillows or a toothbrush or room service food delivered to your room with a robot. And do we have a place for that in senior living? I think we do. I think we could easily be doing food service with robots across the campus. I think we could be doing package deliveries with robots across the campus, and that would still provide that level of concierge and customer service that our residents expect, but it would also free up our staff from an efficiency perspective to do things that they maybe prefer to do, or that they're more well trained or well suited to do. And so that's something that we're looking at legitimately right now. And it wasn't a problem that was on my radar 2 years ago because we had ample staff to support our culinary operations. But now we've got a staffing challenge. We've got a new service that we have to provide. And so what started as a problem is hopefully going to yield a really unique solution for our community and for our residents.
Yeah, that does sound like a really good solution. There's so much that a robot can do without besides the personal touch that a waiter or a waitress can bring. And I think it's a great thing to start leveraging now for sure. And I can tell that you're passionate about that too. Is that something you really like working on?
Well, I really like problem solving. That's something that I enjoy a lot. Taking a look at a broken process or an inefficient process and trying to figure out how to create efficiency. Um, I think something that's unique about me is that I try to think about it a lot from the resident's perspective too. Like,
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
does a resident think about having their food brought to the table via a robot versus a person? You know, and so we try to tailor those workflows with the use of automation in a way that doesn't necessarily impact the resident's perspective of our organization or the service that they're receiving. Um, but try to create efficiency from a staff perspective so that we can allow our staff to really operate at the height or the peak of their skill set or their license or their education or whatever it is, so that they don't have to do as many, I don't want to call them menial, but repetitive tasks that are more behind the curtain tasks. Um, and so, it's important to me to maintain that resident customer service perspective while trying to find some of these efficiencies, and that's something that I think I'm very passionate about, and I'm very excited about for the future. I think there's a lot of opportunities across our entire industry, whether it's at a community or within the home, where we can improve workflows, adopting technology from a sort of, like I said, behind the scenes or behind the curtain perspective, while maintaining a really high level of customer service and customer engagement.
I have a question I want to ask you because it seems like you got it all worked out. And I know that sometimes the things that that we try to do the research, the great ideas that we have, sometimes they fall flat. I know this as an entrepreneur, sometimes you just have to, throw a lot at the wall and some things are going to fall down, right? And was there an experience that you can share with us where you were just completely behind it 100% and it just never took?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of those experiences, and I think it has to be part of an organization's culture to not be afraid to fail, right?
Yeah.
We have a really unique position within our organization. We call it the title of the position is a data scientist.
Okay.
And the premise behind the position is that we're trying to leverage information and data to more effectively learn about our clients and our customers, and more effectively learn about the operation of our business. And that particular role has been really interesting for our organization. First of all, it's a tremendous benefit. I'm super glad we have that role. But there's been a lot of sort of trial and error, try and fail associated with that role too, where we'll try to get data, we'll try to analyze data, and the data doesn't tell us what we need it to, or the data wasn't right to begin with, or we can't collect the data. Um, and and so I feel like every time we start to do something that's new or innovative or outside of the box, there's sort of like a handful of efforts where we fail before we get it right. Sometimes you fail once and then you get it right, and sometimes you fail 10 times and then you get it right. But that it rarely works the first time you try something, right?
Yeah.
It's usually let's try it and then let's try it again because we learned something from that first effort that didn't go as well as we needed it to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And tell me, if you could think of any gap in terms of age tech or where we're headed in terms of innovation, what comes to mind?
Yeah. If I could sort of just wave a magic wand and fix something that has been, I think, a barrier to some advancement in our space, it really has to do with the different silos of tech that we have across the entire industry and across the entire space. And I think it's impactful to our residents too, right? I think about my experience with Starbucks, for example, right? I go to Starbucks just about every Friday. I treat myself to a Starbucks drink on the way to work on Fridays.
What do you get? I'm curious.
Well, it depends on the time of year.
Okay.
I'm a cold drink coffee drinker in the summertime when it's warm out, and I really love the nitro poured cold brews.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then in the cooler weather, tend to drink a hot coffee of some sort, maybe a latte, or um, I like the flat whites a lot,
Yeah.
the basic flat whites. But my process on Friday mornings, I'll leave home. Now I've got a Siri routine programmed, and I'll say, hey Siri, order my order at Starbucks. But it took me a little bit to get to that point. But I love that experience because I pull up in the parking lot and there's like 25 cars wrapped around the building waiting to order their beverage and get their beverage. I park my car across the street and I walk in and grab my beverage and I walk out and wave to all of the people who haven't figured out how to create that efficiency in their life yet.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm trying to figure out ways that we can create those types of experiences for older adults in senior living, where it's just easy and it's convenient and people love it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges that we face is just the silos of applications and transactions that need to happen, right? Log into this for this experience or this transaction, and log into this for this transaction. And if you want to get your medical records, you have to call this phone number and have them faxed to this place. And
Um,
I just want to create a single pane of glass that allows people to experience what they need to experience in an easy way as an older adult. And I think we'll get there at some point, but it's just
Mm.
very fragmented right now.
I totally agree. I help a lot of people with their patient portals, and everything seems to have an account and a password. So I am wholeheartedly behind your approach. Um, is there anything else you want to add in terms of what you're working on or what you're looking forward to?
Well, no, not particularly. I was going to just comment and tell you what a great job I think you do in educating older adults. I think it's so important. It's something that we took up here at Cypress Cove across our organization a couple years ago. We've got a dedicated person that does not only troubleshooting for folks that live on our campus, but also try to do quite a bit of thought leadership and teaching people about new technology. We've kind of taken the Apple Genius Bar approach where we'll do like topical sessions on, using Facebook or using Instacart or editing photos or something like that.
Mm.
And it's fun. I mean, it's engaging from a resident perspective. They love learning new things and
Yeah.
trying new things. But it's also comforting knowing that somebody's there to hold their hand if they need help or if they feel like they get in too deep. And so I just think, what you're doing and providing that education across the industry is so needed. And thinking about the perspectives of older adults as we continue to define technology for this segment of our population is a much needed voice. And I commend those efforts and applaud all of the work that you're doing in that
Thank
space.
you. That's so kind of you. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. It's a passion of mine. So I do it regardless, but I appreciate you recognizing that. And with that, I just want to thank you for coming on today, sharing all that you're doing and involved in from a totally different perspective. And I really enjoyed having you on today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you next time.